Good afternoon, and welcome to another match in the second round of the Public Sector Debates competition. A very special hello to those of you joining us on our social media platform, YouTube. I am Tamika Gunmighty, Communication Specialist in the Transformation Implementation Unit. Today, we have 12 teams competing to advance to the quarterfinals. We are currently joined by the Development Bank of Jamaica and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade. They will be debating the moot. One of the biggest barriers to digital transformation in the public sector is organizational culture. Be it resolved that the Jamaica public sector is resistant to change and not willing to embrace new technologies. I will first invite Team Proposition to introduce themselves.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Damaria Ibanks, and I'm the first speaker from the DBJ.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Adain Brooks, and I'm the team captain and deputy prime minister.
Good afternoon, everyone. The name is Travel Mullings, and I'm the third speaker from the proposition.
Thank you so much. Now we invite Team Opposition to introduce themselves.
Morning, everyone. I'm Ramon Addison, Foreign Service Officer for the Foreign Trade Department.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Tisana Clark, Foreign Service Officer in Economic Affairs Department.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Carly Lear, Customer Service Manager and the captain for this team. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, teams. Once again, our adjudicators for today's match are our partners from the Jamaica Association for Debating and Empowerment Limited, JADE. Judges, could you please introduce yourselves?
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Cleveland Tomlinson. I am one of the chief adjudicators for the competition, and I will be your chair judge for today's match.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Ravon Thomas Matthews, and I'll be one of your wing judges for today's debate.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Damario Patterson, and I'm the other wing adjudicator for this debate.
Okay, thank you so very much, judges. Teams are familiar with the rules, so let the debate begin. Over to you, judges. Good luck, teams.
Thank you, Tamika, for beautifully opening for us. With that said, ladies and gentlemen, let's get 8 minutes on the clock for the first proposition speaker.
Ready when you are? All right. Culture does not change because we desire to change it. Culture changes when the organization is transformed. Mr. Speaker, my opponents, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. My government is here to propose the moot. One of the biggest barriers to digital transformation in the public sector is organizational culture. Be it resolved that the Jamaican public sector is resistant to change and not willing to embrace new technologies. As Prime Minister, I will explore the themes: culture as embedded resistance, being digitalized but not transformed, and failure of change management and leadership. I am buttressed by my deputy, who will explore our digital infrastructure and our lack of proper preparation for adaptation. My government minister will forge a way forward despite these shortcomings. Organizations operate by a common modus operandi. This is organizational culture, and it is the shared beliefs, values, and attitudes that influence the behavior of its employees and their disposition to public service delivery. Digital transformation in government is defined by the Inter-American Development Bank as the adoption and generation and integration of digital technologies into the business models and strategies that change how government interacts through a more seamless, coordinated, and hassle-free ecosystem to create a pleasant experience for the citizens. The public sector, which encompasses all levels of government and government-controlled enterprises, has shown passive resistance in the form of unresponsive obstructionism. It is also seen in the lack of enthusiasm, apathy, and uncorporativeness to embrace new technologies such as machinery, software, procedures, or methods of a different nature. When compared to technologies previously used, they should improve coordination, business processes, and leverage information and communication. Note, this debate is taking place in the context as described by sociologist DiMaggio that people are innately resistant as we are built on loss aversion and fear of the unfamiliar. Opposition, picture this. A digitalized and transformed Jamaica is one where the public sector has a cultural shift in its approach to service delivery, from one that is so bureaucratic and unresponsive to one that is collaborative, user-centered, innovative, results-oriented, and has a clear strategy for engagement. Contrasting this with what we currently have is a lack of innovation, lack of agility, lack of true performance management and accountability coming from an M&E professional, and lack of citizen and user-centeredness. This continues to be a drag on our growth and development. In the context of the Jamaican public sector, digital transformation must be framed as a culture strategy. Sadly, Mr. Speaker, despite the efforts of the TIU, we're not satisfied that digital transformation has taken off. We need a renewal of mind throughout the entire system. The IDB notes that the aim of digital transformation in government should be to provide better services to the citizens through a user-centered strategy. It also stresses the importance of creating shared services for the entire public sector to access and improve efficiency and the user experience. So tell me, why is it? Why my grandmother must submit 2 life certificates every quarter to collect her NIS and accountant general's pension? Shouldn't the agencies collaborate with each other to make it easier for the elderly? If she's alive for one, she must alive for the other. Why is it that if a PATH beneficiary needs to access other social services from the same Ministry of Labour and Social Security, they must sign up in the office multiple times when there's a beneficiary management information system with all their information? Can it not be shared between the same areas under this one ministry? Why did COVID-19 catch us flat-footed? Our slip was exposed. The pandemic was able to reveal the inadequacies in public sector. It is coming, my dear. In the public sector digital infrastructure, despite the many plans for digital transformation pre-2020, access to critical systems and simply having a laptop to use at home was problematic for many MDAs. Opposition. The point is, these examples demonstrate how the current public sector setup is frustrating Jamaicans. We need a coordinated approach to increase back office sharing of information using ICT. Until we focus on this culture shift, all the digital transformation efforts will continue to run into roadblocks mounted by a public sector culture that is averse to efficiency and innovation. We have all heard it before. Government workers are lazy, and we cannot go into the private sector with our behavior. Mr. Speaker, this government acknowledges the efforts that have been undertaken to bring Jamaica into the digital era. However, we reiterate that we continue to pursue digitalization without true transformation. The opposition is going to brag about digital transformation initiatives, but these are merely instances of records and documents being digitized or scanned to be placed online, or a few processes becoming digitalized. But we ask, where is the digital transformation? Digital transformation must improve the ease of doing business, increase connectivity across government. It must be hassle-free. It must be user-friendly. It must be people-centered. Can you honestly say, opposition, that we have this in the public sector? Some of the efforts that have missed the transformation mark include e-procurement for government tendering, digitalized but not transformed. My HR Plus, digitalized but not transformed. The TAJ portal, digitalized but not transformed. Gov.net, the GOJ portal, digitalized but not transformed. Colleagues, you see the trend. We are taking nimble steps to drive computerization. However, where is the increased utility and shift in service delivery? Digitalized but not transformed is the reality of the Jamaican public sector, where people are just going along with new systems to follow suit, but we're not driving improved customer service. We have not embraced ownership of the new technology. They have not re-envisioned their role in the public sector as a facilitator of innovation and economic growth. Mr. Speaker, the failure of change management and leadership in the Jamaican public sector has also been a major barrier. For example, The implementation of the Jamaica Customs Agency System for Customs Data, ASICUDA, while despite significant investment in the technology and infrastructure needed, the implementation has been fraught with challenges. The resistance of the customs officers to adopt the new system has been attributed in part to the lack of effective training, support, and planning, where many of the officers just rely on outdated paper-based systems and continue to create backlogs and bottlenecks. Failure of change management and leadership has resulted in resistance to digital transformation and a failure to fully realize the potential of new technologies and processes. Mr. Speaker, the TIU has been tasked with reversing this spell across the entire public sector. What a feat. They have trained over 20 change champions, but where are the business results? Where? Success will only be seen when the public sector leaders fully embrace their role, understand that they drive digital transformation, communicate, and lead from the front. But sadly, many of them themselves fear becoming obsolete if true transformation occurs. This government stands by the point that despite the many digitization and digitalization efforts, there's no digital transformation of the public sector due to organizational culture of inherent passive resistance to change, lack of proper leadership, and change management. I rest my case.
Thank you, first proposition speaker. Let's hear the debate being opened on team opposition with the first opposition speaker. 8 minutes on the clock.
Honorable judges, my opponents, members of the audience, good day. My team and I stand here with evidence that we can bank on to oppose the moot. Be it resolved, the Jamaican public sector is resistant to change and not willing to embrace new technologies. We have noted the definitions and contextualizations presented by our opponents as they seek to defend the moot along the lines that organizational culture in the public sector is one of the biggest barriers to digital transformation. Whereas it is understood that there are several factors that influence the uptake of new technologies, my team and I stand resolute that the public servants are not resistant, neither are we unwilling to welcome and embrace new technologies. The organizational culture is actually characterized by our resourcefulness and our ability to effectively and efficiently turn and make fashion. Embracing new technologies is at the core of our ability to ensure and advance digital transformation. Before diving into my argument, my team throughout this debate will use the term e-government to mean the process of government ICTs to enhance efficiency and effectiveness of the public service delivery. As first speaker, the task falls to me to present to you my team's position on the organizational culture in Jamaican public sector, as well as the biggest barriers to digital transformation of the sector, which includes technical and financial issues such as the lack of infrastructure and the lack of adequate financial resources hinted at by my opponents. My second speaker will highlight the social barriers, such as the digital divide. And my last speaker will cement the fact with thorough examples which have demonstrated perfectly how the Jamaican public sector has welcomed and embraced new technologies. A key finding from research by Professor Waller from the University of the West Indies in an article entitled "Government Transforming the Barriers" shows that organizational issues, such as the resistance to change to electronic ways, was not identified as a barrier to e-government. This therefore flies in the face of the guiding statement preceding today's moot. It is not an issue of public sector willingness, but rather an issue of inadequate funding
Point of information.
Required for infrastructural investment and accessibility. Let me first address the issue of funding. Professor Wallace study reports that the lack of money is the most significant and serious barrier to the implementation of government, in e-government in the sector. To successfully implement e-government, it weighs heavily on the government's budget and their capacity to invest in the provision, upgrade, and the maintenance of these new technologies. A number of ministries, departments, and agencies in the sector have limited annual budgets with limited financial resources required for the sustainable implementation of the capital-intensive nature of digital transformation.
Point of information.
Accepted.
You made reference to abundance of resources, but how do you account for institutions across the public sector that consistently returns money to the consult fund because of failure of leadership?
But in terms of return, in the absence of proof to support such claim, we note clearly that in the ministry's responsibility for that sector portfolio, the Ministry of Science and Technology, in the estimates of expenditure, approximately $7.2 billion was allocated by the government, which represents the 11th highest allocation by ministry, which speaks to, let me point out, the priority accorded to the Jamaican government in effecting digital transformation. Now, if it is that you're allocating funds and not ensuring that they are put to use, it's not a matter of the public sector willingness. Let me remind you or point out that the public sector does not have access to these funds. It is how it is dispersed and allocated by the ministry. It is therefore evident that it is not the baseless accusation of the public sector put forward by my opponents that poses one of the biggest barriers to transformation. On the contrary, the public sector is willing, but transformation process is significantly hindered by limited financial allocation by the government. My second point relates to the lack of an enabling technological environment to support the use of new technologies, compounded by the concentration of infrastructure in urban areas. Notwithstanding that Jamaica is more advanced than most developing countries with regards to infrastructure, the limited infrastructure which is available is highly concentrated in the urban areas. In many rural areas, electricity is unstable and internet is unavailable, which impact the capacity to conduct government-related transactions digitally in these areas. Let me remind my opponents that there are public sector workers working in the rural areas too. If we are to see optimal progress in the digital transformation of the sector, there is a need to increase access to new technologies island-wide. The finger should therefore not be pointed at the public sector, but rather to the government themselves to address this issue. Technology concentration in the urban areas hinders the progress of digital transformation in the public sector. In December 2020, O'Neill Grant, president of the Civil Service Association, led the charge for the distribution of 26,000 prepaid MasterCards, which were welcomed with excitement, as the Loop article put it. Further, during 2021 Civil Service Week, the Honorable Marsha Smith, speaking on behalf of Prime Minister, said, and I quote, "The government recognizes and appreciates how quickly civil servants have adapted to the use of technology outside of the physical office space to meet the demands of the public." End quote. This highlights one of my many supporting positions, that not only is the public sector willing to embrace new technologies, but they have even acted on their own initiatives to advance accessibility to the wider public. Clearly, the public sector is willing, but the transformation process is significantly hindered by the lack of enabling technological environment, crippled by the concentration of infrastructure in the urban areas. Again, judges, audience, and my esteemed opponents, it is not this organizational culture that raises hurdles of e-government, but rather significant impediment is a technical barrier of allocation of infrastructure to the government and creating an enabling environment for use of technologies. Thank you.
Thank you, first opposition speaker. May I ask, where you finished? You had roughly 40 seconds remaining, but the adjudicator would have mistakenly indicated that through the bell. So we will provide you the opportunity to wrap up, and it's only fair that that be done. So. 40 seconds in addition to the 15 seconds grace period. So you essentially have roughly a minute.
Information and communication technologies continue to be embedded in the delivery of e-government, where several platforms and applications have been developed, launched, and supported by the public sector, such as Explore Jamaica and the e-commerce national delivery systems, ENDS as we know it, among others, are highlighted by the Planning Institute of Jamaica's in their survey. The ease of doing business improved with transition to several services online, such as the tax compliance certificate, where the auto approval process is now done online, the retrofitting of court facilities to embrace technological facilities for remote hearings and software that supports government-to-government relations. The success of these initiatives is attributed to the contribution of dedicated public servants to embrace these technologies. Thank you.
Thank you, first opposition speaker, for your presentation. Let's take the case from the second proposition speaker.
Mr. Speaker, we first want to challenge something that we hear from side opposition. We can provide evidence that the IDB is the lead funding agency for digital transformation and transformation across our public sector. So money is not our problem. Our problem lies with the bureaucracy that is failing to implement the programs. And we will further demonstrate that this is the case across the system. It is not about us not having the money, my opposition leader. Mr. Speaker, members of the panel, good morning. Jamaica's historical approach to digital transformation has exacerbated resistance, leading to botched initiatives, many of which the opposition leader spoke of, which has increased the misery index of the people of Jamaica. Digitization is not an end in and of itself. It must translate into more seamless, responsive, and efficient government. Sadly, we do not have this because those steering the public sector have not embraced a new way of thinking, a new mindset, and a new approach to drive real innovation and performance management. The status quo remains. I will cover the following thematic areas: not prepared, but expected to adapt to new technologies; bubbling resistance, the muzzled approach to transformation; and finally, putting people at the center of the transformation. Mr. Speaker, resistance in the public sector is rooted in the failure of education. And we are arguing that the education system produces public sector workers who are not digitally adequate to respond to the emerging technologies. And this is quite a conundrum, isn't it? On one hand, we are having to exist in an ever-evolving digital landscape that demands constant adaptation and innovation. But yet, the education system churns out public sector workers that cannot adapt. And we are seeing it in the resistance we are seeing in the public sector. Mr. Speaker, comparatively, Jamaica has a 55% internet penetration pre-pandemic. Comparatively, Barbados was 81.8%. Where is the GOJ broadband strategy? Can you connect to government public Wi-Fi hotspot? The last time I tried, it said connected without internet. This is implementation that is failing. We have implemented, but we are not monitoring. It is not a money issue, opposition leader. Digital illiteracy inures a frustrating public sector. Economies with a higher digital penetration translates into improved ease of doing business. We hear the opposition leader highlighting information about the ease of doing business, but I stand here and challenge the veracity of those data. Barbados ranks in the ease of paying taxes at 96, while Jamaica ranks at 124. That is a great disparity. But yet, the opposition leader talks about the successes. Mr. Speaker, we want to to point to now bubbling resistance within the public sector. There is clear evidence of the culmination of the flawed strategy over time. The public sector is now resistant, where it is spinning in a wheel of sea of resistance from workers who feel ignored and who feel left behind. Minister Vaz recognized this when he noted that the implementation of digital technologies historically has focused on systems. But now the public servants are resisting because they feel that they have been left behind.
Point of information.
Not at this time. Despite digitizing some of the services, the misery index of Jamaicans doing business at TAJ is still high. Misery index of people clearing a barrel is still high. The misery index of Jamaicans registering a company is still high. Digitized, but not transformed. Transformation is about embracing change. It is about rethinking what you are as a public servant and how you deliver public goods and services. We have not seen that change in mindset. And this is supported by Dr. Knife, who notes that resistance is at a palpable level at this juncture. Mr. Speaker, we also draw to IDB, who makes the point that 61% of public managers interviewed in a report noted that they have faced resistance in the implementation of projects across the public sector. A classic example, the TAJ, who the opposition will brag as being a success story, they have acknowledged that in their implementation process, they have seen resistance from staff, and this confirms our argument that we are not having a resource issue, we are having an implementation issue at those at top management, middle management, and naturally it trickles down to those at the lower level. Mr. Speaker, we will speak to some of the issues as it relates to TAJ consistently being wobbling along. It costs the country millions in productive hours because TAJ customer service is not one that is pleasing to the Jamaican people. Digitalize, but not transform. Digital transformation, which we're here today, is about, as my Prime Minister outlined, about improving service delivery. It is about improving Jamaica's experience, the digital interface with government. We are not seeing that. We are not transformed. Mr. Speaker, I will point to some other initiatives, such as the My HR Plus. Slow out the blocks, I would say. However, bursars are already resisting this transition. How do you respond, Mr. Opposition Leader? Also, Mr. Speaker, the Jamaica Development Application Portal is designed to make government operations streamlined. But where is that project, Mr. Speaker? The funding of IDB is fueling it, but implementation is a bottleneck issue. This is because if senior managers should respond, they will become obsolete. Let me talk about e-procurement. Tashfin Ahmad et al. Shows that public sector workers display resistance to e-procurement systems despite the obvious benefits. Mr. Speaker, digitalized but not transformed.
Thank you, second proposition speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, let's take the contribution from the second opposition speaker.
Good afternoon, distinguished adjudicators, ladies and gentlemen of the audience, and my esteemed opponents. Digitalize but not transform. I'm not getting the point where there is a resistance, though. I am truly appalled by the baseless declarations purported by the proposition this afternoon. I believe my teammate made it very clear that the Jamaican public sector is gung-ho on the concept of digital transformation. The Jamaican public sector is willing, able, and ready, from policies to statutory bodies, projects, and initiatives. I am sure my opponents from the Development Bank of Jamaica can attest to the concerted efforts of the public sector that embraced and enabled the thrust toward digital transformation in the private sector during the lockdown of the COVID-19 pandemic. Am I wrong in believing that the same sentiments would resonate for digital transformation in at least some of your in-office services? I think not. A 2015 peer-reviewed academic article titled Barriers to Transforming Government in Jamaica, the authors found that organizational issues such as top management support, resistance to change to the electronic way, and lack of collaboration are not identified as barriers to e-government in Jamaica. Should this well-researched, credible piece of data not be enough, I will illustrate just how much the Jamaican public sector has adopted new technology in the management of government business. Despite what our esteemed opponents may wish to present this afternoon, the facts are clear. The GOJ has established through its many initiatives and policies just how valuable new technology is in delivering the many processes of the public sector. May I remind our opponents that the GOJ ICT Policy Standards and Guidelines Manual of 2018, PSG Manual for short, was established to better understand, on the part of all key stakeholders not accepted, of their roles and responsibilities with respect to the management of IT in the government. It also strengthens the management of IT across government and better enable decision-making. The PSG manual exemplifies the public sector's goal and targeted efforts to propel digital transformation within the public sector. Not only that, but the PSG manual, written by public sector workers, I might add, was established via a consultative process with all MDAs, thus representing one of the public sector's many thrusts towards digital transformation. The GOJ Policies Guidelines Manual illustrates the value of digitalization across the Jamaican public sector, as well as establishing an iterative culture of decision-making with respect to digitalization. As my teammate stated earlier, I will elaborate on the social challenges, outlining two key points that illustrate the Jamaican public sector's willingness towards adapting new technology. Firstly, the Jamaican public sector is keen on digital transformation as they seek to address the challenge of digital divide on the island. The 2011 ICT policy, written by public sector workers, defined digital divide as the gap between people with effective access to digital and information technology and those with very limited or no access at all. It includes the imbalances in physical access to technology as well as the imbalances with affordability. As one of the public sector's efforts to address digital divide in Jamaica, the National Broadband Initiative was developed in December 2020 to address the inequalities caused by digital divide. This initiative included the expansion of government fiber optic cable, microwave infrastructure, and public Wi-Fi hotspots.
Is it in use?
Is it because there is resistance? Now, opponents, tell me if there were that. If it were that the public sector was resistant to new technologies, why were these initiatives welcomed with open arms? Secondly, the Jamaican public sector's eagerness towards digital transformation is shown in the concerted and celebrated effort to incorporate digital technology in education. One of the more prominent initiatives, eLearning Jamaica, established in 2005 with responsibility for implemented e-learning projects in collaboration with ministries, departments, and agencies. eLearning Jamaica provides state-of-the-art technology in government-operated schools, selected teachers' colleges, and other institutions across the island to enhance teaching and learning processes. What were you saying, Second Speaker, about teaching the younger generation about digital transformation? My opponents, let us not forget that during the height of the pandemic, our education stakeholders built up a tremendous amount of resilience and capacity in technology-mediated instructions. Speaking at the investor briefing for the initial public offering of one-on-one educational services last August, Minister Favour Williams in her remarks stated that, and I quote, "Incorporation of technology in the teaching and learning process will remain a permanent component of the education system." This exemplifies without any uncertainty that there is indeed championing of digital transformation in the public sector by the public sector. In closing, judges, opponents, as Jamaica strives towards achieving first world status and enhancing economic development, I wish to reiterate that digital transformation is an ongoing process. Therefore, what is relevant 2 years ago may very well evolve into something new today. As you will recall, the pandemic has quickened the pace with which the nation has approached the fourth industrial revolution, as there was increased adaptation of technology supporting productivity improvements, which means the pandemic called for a particular strain of technological transformation in Jamaica. Had the public sector not been willing to embrace this particular opportunity, I assure you, the acceleration that Jamaica experienced would not have been possible. Therefore, it is abundantly clear that the public sector is in fact embracing new technology. I rest my case.
Thank you, second opposition speaker. And we will take the case from the third proposition speaker. Right, we're ready when you are.
With all the glorious infrastructure and the investment mentioned by the opposition, I ask the question, why are we still lagging behind? I had a toothache on my first trip to the United States. I found a public health clinic, and within 5 minutes, my travel and residence information were verified by a collaboration system. The dental consultant was connected through video conferencing with access to all the relevant operation tools. Guided by the consultant, the dental staff cured my condition in just under 1 hour. Within hours, I was emailed a comprehensive document for my health records. Opposition leader, at no level did I interact with paper or resubmitted information already in government database. Mr. Speaker, this is digital transformation. From beginning to end, the people, the product, and the process synchronized for the ease of those working in the public sector and for the benefit of the end user. Let me reiterate. This government is not arguing whether public sector is digitized, nor are we arguing whether there is digitalization within the public sector. This government embraces the fundamental argument presented in the motion that public sector organizational culture stages one of the biggest barriers to digital transformation. Let's talk about resistance. Why? Why did my babysitter need a whole day to collect her path check? In fact, why was she among hundreds that stand in the sun for 4 hours only to be told that money ran out for the rest of the day? Why? Why, despite filling out an application for birth certificate online, you are still required to print the paper and join the long lines of the RGD? This is because we are digitized, but the process and the people are not transformed. Where is the business process improvement? Not accepted at this moment. Where is the hassle-free experience with government and the greater efficiency? Mr. Speaker, digital transformation is when a country can conduct an election online like Estonia. Digital transformation is when with the ease of doing business is dramatically improved. Digital transformation, my friend, is when the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, with the click of one button, can tell us how many Jamaicans are living in the diaspora. Can you do that? Do that and beat me. Do that right now and beat me. Mr. Speaker, how many times have you heard the saying, you cannot put the cart before the horse? Only when people drive technology will we get digital transformation. The IDB says the connection between the digital agenda and the human capital management is both undeniable and inescapable. Mr. Speaker, this suggests that the engine behind digital transformation includes people and process. Culture will only shift when we own the changes to the product, the process, and the plan. The public sector must therefore be brought in at the stage of conceptualization and design, and not at the point of implementation. Digital transformation without people inclusion only leads to frustration, generational segregation, resignation, skills migration, resulting in public sector resistance. Mr. Speaker, that same IDB report further states that no digital transformation is possible unless the digital specialists carry it out and civil servants are capable to properly implement the new technologies. My opponents, this government is aware of the public sector digital transformation plan. However, how effective is the current coordination efforts? How do we hold civil servants accountable? Again, how do we measure this phenomenon? For digital transformation to truly take place, the process must be continuous, investment humongous, the achievement trackable, not only at the macro level, but also at the micro level, where most of the resistance is demonstrated. All this intertwined with continuous meaningful engagement with those who are at the front line of implementation. Let us set up then a digital transformation oversight committee, detox, public sector transformation. In this industrial revolution is not possible without synchronization of product, process, and people engaging in the execution of an agile digital transformational plan. Otherwise, we are stuck at digitalization. I thank you.
We thank the third proposition speaker for that rather spirited contribution to the debate. Let's take the contribution from the third opposition speaker. After which, we will pause for 1 minute to allow the reply speakers to gather their thoughts. Then we will take the opposition reply speaker, followed by the final speaker, the proposition reply speaker. So 5 minutes on the clock.
Thank you. Tim O'Reilly says, what new technology does is create new opportunities to do a job that customers want done. In addressing my opponents, two things. Putting people at the center of the process. The government of Jamaica has done that. They've even mandated all MDAs within the public sector to develop customer improvement plans and a team to do the monitoring through the Service Excellence Program. Two, reference to make, as to say, digital transformation, RGD. During 2022-23, the last 42 months recorded a 130% increase in offline services to both local and foreign customers. So I better disagree that digital transformation, e-government is actually taking place. Good afternoon, judges, my humble opponents, and guests. Based on this quote, to further strengthen my team's arguments, I will now give 3 examples. As a matter of fact, I started as to how public sector workers embrace new technologies to create new opportunities to deliver world-class customer service to the public. First, the RGD, through implementation of new technologies, as highlighted before, has seen an increase in online services to their customers, including record updating and real-time online searches. Also increasing online services included application of birth certificates, which you can now pay online, and RGD will even send the documents overseas to their clients. Digital e-government at its best. Secondly, the Jamaican Customs Agency, through its J-Swift, creates new opportunities for improving the delivery of all services to exporters and importers through a single access point, one shop all, as they would call it. This allows for the removal of unnecessary bureaucracy while improving efficiency and increasing the quality of our goods and services, my humble opponents. In fact, and I have demonstrated my esteemed opponents, our arguments do not lag in the past, nor are they grounded in subjectivity. We are supported by real examples of how dedicated public servants and public organizations continue to overcome these barriers, such as poor infrastructure and limited resources, which we do get, like from IDB, to innovate in the effective discharge of their mandate. Are you still in doubt, my opponents? The third example, the Jamaica Constabulary Force has invited the public, you and me, to attend their 4-day exposition under the theme People, Quality, and guess what? Technology, to be held 11th to the 14th of May at the arena. This surely will demonstrate how the JCF is celebrating innovation to deliver greater level of services to us, the public. I'm going to reiterate a comment raised by my first speaker. My humble opponent, even our country leaders recognize technological embrace by the public sector. The Prime Minister, the Most Honorable Andrew Holness, in a speech delivered during the virtual 2021 Civil Service Week Church service, said the government recognizes and appreciates how quickly civil servants have adapted to the use of technology outside the physical of a space to meet the demand of the public. To defend this moot as it stands is an affront to the many public servants who, contrary to the statement it purports, welcome new technology as we appreciate its facilitation of our work. Are you, my brother opponents, resistant to change? Are you truly unwilling to embrace new technology? Judges, guests, and my esteemed opponents, my first speaker has contextualized the moot and provided strong arguments that technical and financial barriers prevent the utilization of technology in the public sector. My second speaker took the argument even further by highlighting social barriers. And you have just heard my closing argument, presenting 3 strong examples that support the position that public workers are not resistant to change and openly embrace technologies. Therefore, the public sector workers, new technology has indeed been the critical tool for increasing individual and collective productivity and output, and ultimately creating new market growth, social development, and customer satisfaction. Thank you.
Thank you, third opposition speaker. We will pause for 1 minute. Ladies and gentlemen, 1 minute has passed. I think you got 30 seconds in addition. But with that, we will take the opposition reply speaker, followed by a proposition.
Honorable judges, members of the audience, my opponents, good day once more. My opponents referenced the inaccessibility of laptops in the education system. But let me point out to the government that it is not the public sector's responsibility to provide these technologies and training. How can they embrace what is not provided? The implementation of the Jamaica I program is exemplary when we consider the infrastructure expansion towards the rural and the urban societies. It is island-wide and inclusive. Jamaica I, as used by officers and the road safety unit in terms of filing traffic violations. Also, mention was made about the sustainable implementation. We cannot depend on the external support of the IDB and other donors all the time. Technologies require frequent maintenance. If we are to wait on funding all the time, that sounds like a delay in transformation to me. There was also mention of implemented but not monitoring. Transformation goes beyond just providing these technologies. Evidence were provided by our opponents were anecdotal, which is baseless and unscientific. Reference made to the education system and being conducive to technology. Coming straight from my opponent's mouth, it is the education structure that impedes transformation and not the organizational culture of the wider public sector. It is pointless to compare a US experience to a developed country like Jamaica, when there is substantial difference between our two economies. Slovenia, for example, which is a country with similar social and economic structure of Jamaica, has effective digital transformation because of a greater allocation of their resources to ICT development, which is limited, as highlighted, by the government of Jamaica, with a mere $7.2 billion and relying on aid which is not sustainable for the effective implementation of digital transformation in the public sector. With this, we rest. Thank you.
I'll tell you when you can begin. Sure. All right, so you may begin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, what we have seen today is an opposition that has failed to understand the motion. The opposition has come here today and spoken about efforts at digitization. But where they have failed, and conveniently so, is to highlight digital transformation. And that is what we want the focus to be on. Digital transformation is not a means in and of itself. It results in something. What that something is, opposition: improved business processes, improved customer experience for the citizens, and an overall improved bureaucracy that is inviting to invest with the government. Mr. Speaker, we have presented arguments where we acknowledge that there are efforts to digitize, but we have demonstrated that those efforts are being frustrated by a bureaucracy that is not willing to pivot, a bureaucracy that is not willing to change, and it is primarily because it suits the interests of those at the helm. Also, Mr. Speaker, Cabinet gives policy direction, but Cabinet does not implement. Implementation is where we're having the problem, not the announcements. So the Prime Minister will come and announce that we are establishing the ICT authority. Up to last week, Minister Green continues to promise an ICT authority. Where the lag is, where the bottleneck is, within the MDAs that have failed to track and to establish a program for monitoring and performance. Mr. Speaker, we have institutionalized a framework here with the TIU, but the TIU will tell you that they have trained 20 change makers. But where are the results? It cannot be that people are just updating resumes. We must see the transformation, and that is where the opposition is missing the mark. They have not understood the gravity of our argument. We are not talking about digitization. We are talking about where is the improved public service delivery. You spoke to the traffic ticket violation issue. But how can one man have 500 tickets and still able to renew his driver's license? That reflects a bureaucracy that is not in sync, it is not coordinated, and it is not prepared to respond to what the issues are. That is not a money issue. That is a mere managerial issue. Why is it that you apply online for a birth certificate and you have to still print the paper and carry it into RGD? That is just frustrating the Jamaican people. We want a re-envisioned approach. We are proposing that transformation is about a new way of thinking. We want the public sector to embrace new digital technology. We want them to live it. And the opposition, you continue to miss the mark.
Thank you so very much, speakers. Ladies and gentlemen, I think the only thing missing was an offering plate. Let us give another round of applause to the DBJ and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade. They have debated the moot. One of the biggest barriers to digital transformation in the public sector is organizational culture. Be it resolved that the Jamaican public sector is resistant to change and not willing to embrace new technologies. Thank you so very much, teams. The judges will now deliberate, and we will use that time to refresh ourselves. The next person from which you will hear is the chief adjudicator, who will sum up the match and announce the winner. For those of you online, stay tuned. We will be right back.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon. I have judged several debates on the local debate circuit, and I've also had the opportunity to judge internationally. I think I can say unreservedly, and I think that is a consensus from the panel, that the kind of arguments that we saw in this debate was indicative of quality reasoning, credibility, and an employment of intellect in the crafting of those arguments. And I think that for that, we should commend the teams that participated today. I will walk you through how the adjudicators saw the match, and then I will give you the final decision with respect to the team that has won this debate. Let's look at the debate that we saw. Proposition provided us with a differentiation between digitalization and digital transformation. Proposition identified, in essence, that digitalization refers to providing the kind of infrastructure and technological framework and architecture to allow for the provision of better services. However, they identified that that in and of itself is not good, that the provision of this framework and architecture is not sufficient to have an improvement in people's interactions with government entities. So they pointed out to digital transformation, and they identified that digital transformation should be the goal, but digital transformation refers to the overall improvement in people's experiences with government entities where there are not a lot of bottlenecks and people are essentially satisfied. And they said that the overall product is improved. The panel did not buy very much convincingly this sort of differentiation that exists. The panel thought, in its estimation, that opposition would have highlighted that there is not really a distinct differentiation between digitalization of government services and digital transformation. And alas, we didn't get how significant that is to proving the burden that proposition has that people are resistant to change. So I think that that sort of differentiation between digitization and digital transformation did not advance or help proposition in satisfying the burden that they have in this debate of proving why people are resistant to change. So let's go further to see how proposition tried to prove and satisfy this burden. Proposition highlighted that, well, the pandemic has exposed the weaknesses, amplified the deficiencies in government's technological infrastructure, etc. And then they went further to say that we need to improve how people engage with government on the digital level. They identified that the fact that people are resistant to change is what is causing this poor outcome with respect to the kind of service that people get. So they identified a concept called unresponsive obstruction. They said that there are people in the public sector who are reluctant to change, they are resistant to change, and there's a lack of enthusiasm with respect to adopting new technological procedures to engage in the delivery of services. What was lacking on proposition's case, in the estimation of the panel, is why there would be this resistance. So we heard from the first speaker right down to the third speaker that there is this resistance. But it was not proven or developed why there is this resistance. What in the status quo is being protected by the public sector workers, or what will come as a result of this technological change that the public servants are fearful of that causes them to be resistant. So it is not sufficient to tell us that they are resistant. You have to tell us what causes this resistance. Is it that they are protecting something in the status quo? Or is it that they are fearful of a particular outcome that will be heralded by this adoption of technology? Alas, we didn't get that. So when we just oppose this case from proposition against opposition, opposition said, government has provided the infrastructure. albeit we accept that the infrastructure provided is not adequate to get the kind of outcome that Prop wants. Prop wants improved services, improved digital products, so that people don't have to wait in a line at TAJ, they don't have to submit birth certificates 2 times, etc. But Prop said, opposition said, we have provided assistance to essentially ameliorate those concerns. However, we have to take into appreciation government's resource constraints. And it is because of the resource constraints why we are not getting the final outcome that proposition wants. It is not a resistant to change. But then we heard a clapback, a beautiful clapback, I think, from proposition, that, well, it's not the government's coffers that funds digital transformation. It is the IDB. But then I think, with very commendable from opposition, is another response again, that, well, the kind of funding that is needed to generate the kind of infrastructure and the kind of change that Prop wants has to be funding on a sustainable basis. And they identified that even the very same example that the third speaker pointed out about the United States and other jurisdictions, they have been able to sustainably create that sort of funding to beef up their infrastructure, which is not present in our context because of the resource constraints. So they have argued that irrespective of the funding that comes from the IDB, there has to be some sort of support given by our local administration for that to be done. So on that particular clash, opposition wins that clash as to what is the real cause why we're not seeing the final improvement in the people's experience with government entities. But we think that opposition did a beautiful job in going further to identifying that it is not just about technological architecture and framework. It's about looking at the fact that in different sections in the country, we have what is called the digital divide. The fact that there are public sector workers in rural areas, and the infrastructure framework is not set up in these rural areas to facilitate the smooth delivery of services. So the bad service that people get is not because public sector workers are resistant to change, it's the fact that in these rural areas, because of the resource constraints, we have not been able to get the kind of funding, the kind of available resources to beef up this infrastructure. So in essence, opposition is arguing, had we been able to sufficiently allocate resources towards beefing up this infrastructure, then we wouldn't get the kind of bad, poor service that people engage with from the public sector. It is not about resistance to change. It is not about the people or the organization. So I think that in essence, was the case submitted. So the panel weighed those two cases and thought that the arguments from opposition would have won this debate. Significantly so because the burden on proposition was not proved and it needed to be fully articulated. Why is it that people would be resistant? All right, with that said, ladies and gentlemen, opposition has won this debate. And the scores were very close, and possibly we have DBJ could come back as a wild card because on 241 points, opposition has won this debate, and closely behind on 229 points is the Development Bank of Jamaica. So, ladies and gentlemen, the adjudicators are here. Please ask us questions, and everyone. And proposition as well. The best speaker in this debate, thank you for reminding me, Tamika. So on point, the best speaker in this debate, ladies and gentlemen, was the speaker who brought the arguments that were principled and that stood primarily at the end of the debate, the first opposition speaker. Thank you for tuning in to round 2 of the public sector debate competition. Ladies and gentlemen, have a good afternoon.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon and welcome. Welcome to another match in round 2 of the public sector debate competition. A very special hello to those of joining us on our social media platform, YouTube. I am Tamika Gunmighty, Communication Specialist within the Transformation Implementation Unit. Today, we have 12 teams competing to advance to the quarterfinals. We are currently joined by the Victoria Jubilee Hospital and the Passport Immigration and Citizenship Agency, and they will be debating the moot. Jamaica's cultural and creative industries have been estimated to generate 2.2 billion Jamaican dollars annually. Be it resolved that the government of Jamaica should take the lead in doing more to leverage brand Jamaica. I will first invite Team Proposition to introduce themselves.
Is Deandra Facey. I'm the first speaker for the Victoria Jubilee Hospital.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Desiree Denton Sadler, and I am the second speaker, or will be.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Lillian Lewis MacDonald, third speaker.
Thank you so very much. Victoria Jubilee, now we invite the opposition to introduce themselves.
I am Kauna Mackenzie, first speaker.
Sasha Wedderburn, second speaker.
Molly Plummer, third speaker.
Thank you so very much. Once again, our adjudicators for today's match are our partners from the Jamaica Association for Debating and Empowerment Limited, JADE. Judges, could you please introduce yourselves?
Thank you. My name is Cleveland Tomlinson. I'm one of the chief adjudicators for the competition, and I'll be the chair judge for today's match.
My name is Ronaldo Blake, and I'll be a panelist for this match.
Hi, my name is Damario Patterson, and I'm the third adjudicator for this match.
Thank you so very much, judges. Teams are familiar with the rules, so let the debate begin. Over to you, judges, all the best teams.
Thank you, Tamika, for beautifully opening for us. Please be reminded of the speaking times. Ideally, we would have a bell that would ring when 1 minute has passed or when we're indicating a different time periods. However, we don't have that device with us, so we will resort to the original method, which is not ideal, but hopefully can serve for this, where we will clap. So at the end of 1 minute, we will clap, which indicates that 1 minute has passed and points of information can be asked of the speaker on the floor. Similarly, when the speaker enters his or her final minute, we will clap again, indicating that no more points of information can be asked of that speaker. When the speaker's allotted time has elapsed, we will clap 2 times, indicating that time has ended. However, we will allow you 15 seconds to complete your thought, and then I will ask you to cease. All right? So with that said, ladies and gentlemen, we will have 8 minutes on the clock for the first proposition speaker.
Good afternoon, judges, distinguished leaders, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the 45th inaugural meeting of CARICOM States. Jamaica's creative culture industry, CCIs, has been estimated at $2.2 billion annually. Be it resolved that the Jamaican government should take the lead in doing more to leverage Brand Jamaica. We, the key stakeholders, wish to define the terms and phrases in this project, that being 1, to take the lead, 2, leverage, 3, Brand Jamaica, and 4, government. According to the Free Dictionary, to take the lead means to take primary responsibility. According to the Universal Marketing Dictionary, leverage means to add weight, strength, clout, and pull to a matter. According to the Journal of Place Branding and Public Policy, Brand Jamaica is Jamaica's identity, image, and reputation. According to the Oxford Dictionary, a government is defined as a group of people with the power and authority to govern a set of people, state, or country. The moot is then redefined. Be it resolved that the people of Jamaica with authority to govern should be primarily responsible for adding strength, weight, and pull to Jamaica's identity, image, and reputation. As first speaker, I will be addressing Jamaica's unified brand identity. The second speaker will address Jamaica's brand image for economic growth, and third speaker will address the social implications of the brand reputation, all through a governmental lead. There are currently 17 sectors within our CCIs. As a government, we will be coalescing these 17 sectors into 3 major categories. 1, music and craft. 2, digital and media. 3, film, culinary arts. Under one brand, Jamaica, a creative culture. This will be done through the mobilization of 10 governmental agencies and 4 universities of higher education. This unified national brand, Jamaica, a creative culture, will focus heavily on social inclusion, equal opportunity of partnerships for both public and private, and also create a unified external image for Jamaica. Mr. Speaker, a unified national brand will reduce mismanagement of Jamaica's cultural products by private stakeholders. As is, Brand Jamaica is heavily influenced by the private sector, similar to that of a monopoly. The average Jamaican citizen does not have equal access in opportunity or knowledge of the entrance points needed. As so, to solve this issue, the government will be moving forward to reform all policies impacting the national culture, right? To reflect the current brand identity, which is unified, doing away with the fragmentization that currently exists within the sector. Through this mobilization of internal departments, the system will see better framework for development, management, focusing more on equity of access through community business and self-identification. An example of such a policy under the Reformation can be all products and services that are advertised with the label made in Jamaica or associated with this label must be registered, and all royalties based on these products and services paid to the government annually. This renewed identification of the products, registration of the products, will provide the data necessary for the government to implement future planning strategies to improve our CCIs. Through these governmental agencies, the foundation, the infrastructure will be developed in order to improve Jamaica's brand identity, its use, management, and the propensity of the brand image. A national brand that is unified will help to reduce misappropriation of the national brand by citizens and non-nationals. It is necessary for Jamaica to claim ownership and identification of its varied cultural products, not just some, but all. For example, reggae music should be identified as a part of Jamaica's national identity. This will add strength through association to the nation as a whole, not artists, not companies, not recording production studios, but Jamaica as a whole externally. An example of this misappropriation of our cultural products is seen in the recent Grammy Awards, where the best album for the album and best reggae artist was given to non-nationals who have leveraged our cultural product as their own. It was also done in 1987 by the Steel Pulse Band, which was British. Sting, a British artist, a non-national, also leveraged our cultural product. Through identification and association with a unified national brand, the government will now gain recognition. The Jamaican people as a nation will gain recognition as authentic owners of content. Secondary use can then be allotted to non-nationals that will bring increased external partnerships, whether through registration with the government, with private or public sector bodies externally, which will increase the earning potential for the government, increase the identification of Jamaica with its cultural products as our own. We must claim what is ours as ours first, then anyone else can ask to use. And if we're so nice and it suits us best, we can allow them to use it. A unified national brand will create a positive balance to Jamaica's negative perception externally. According to the positive reinforcement sensitivity theory, perception has a direct impact on cultural lives and influences day-to-day interaction for citizens. An example of this negative perception is that it is known Jamaica is the most dangerous place in the Caribbean and Latin America, according to the Statistical Research Department. Jamaica is also known or perceived to be the coolest people in the Caribbean. Everybody wants to be Jamaican. When they say, and they hear your accent abroad, they will say, "Are you from Jamaica?" We have some of the most beautiful beaches and are perceived as an ideal tourist destination. If, Mr. Speaker, heads of government, we were to amplify the positive outcomes of our CCIs, then we can directly impact the lives of our citizens through improving their behavior. We can reduce antisocial trends that are in our population, thereby reducing these actions and activities that promote crime and violence. Now, Mr. Speaker, when you think about it, we must first identify what is our own. We register what is our own. We monetize what is our own. We promote interdepartmental approaches, collaborative systems through our learned persons that are working in the system under a national policy. Mr. Speaker, I'm simply saying this. In order to change our perception of CCIs, in order for the nation's perception to be changed, for it to be leveraged, the government must take on that role. We must bet on our people, because one thing we're known for, Jamaicans don't finish last. The government is betting on the people that if we reinvest, identify, monetize, and change perception, we will come first. Our CCIs will grow. It will be amplified. Then we will be better able to know what it is we have, leverage it, and it will change the face of Jamaica externally. I thank you.
Thank you, First Proposition, for your contribution, and we will take the contribution from the first opposition speaker.
I like the fact that you said we must bet on our people and not the government. Honorable adjudicators, heroines from the Victoria Jubilee Hospital, guests, and my sagacious colleagues, good afternoon. My teammates and I stand in firm opposition of the moot. Be it resolved that the government of Jamaica should take the lead in doing more to leverage brand Jamaica. Let me first start by saying that my teammates and I concur that the government should play an important role in help leveraging brand Jamaica. we're not going to debate this. Brand Jamaica ought to be harnessed, safeguarded, and disseminated across the global stage with robust returns that would ultimately contribute to the improvement of our fellow citizens' standard of living. The government have made remarkable strides to leverage Brand Jamaica. Credit must be given. For example, in June 2021, the government of Jamaica provided greater safeguards to protect Brand Jamaica in the international marketplace when it successfully amended the Trademarks Act of 1994. Amendments to Section 12 of this law limited the use of the name Jamaica, restricted the use of Jamaica's national symbols, whether our coat of arms, Jamaican flag, map, national colors, and other emblems, unless the registrar at the Jamaica Intellectual Property Office authorizes with specific conditions each request. Minister of Culture, Gender, Entertainment and Sports, the Honorable Olivia Babsy-Grange, spoke excitedly about this achievement to better leverage Brand Jamaica. Notwithstanding, it took the government 27 years for us to get here. 27 years. And you, my worthy opponent, are asking the government to take the lead in doing more to leverage Brand Jamaica after 27 years of us just getting here? Despite these sincere efforts, Brand Jamaica has to contend with the reality of the government of Jamaica cannot cross it. Though Prime Minister, the Most Honorable Andrew Holness, noted that the government made significant investments to monetize and upgrade Brand Jamaica on its economic benefit and value, it takes more than the government's leadership for Brand Jamaica to be protected, harnessed, expanded.
Point of information.
Not right now. And in fact, the government's leadership of leveraging has not been effective. And instead of adding more responsibility to a failing stakeholder, I urge us, honorable judges, to instead be pragmatic and prudent in strategizing and assessing and assigning roles based instead on established records of success. The truth is there are far more positive fiduciary outcomes for relying less on government, as our opponents pointed in their last debate against TPDCO. Furthermore, given the point made by the proposition just 2 weeks ago in their last debate, that the public's confidence in the government is abysmally low, a legitimate discussion can be had on whether the government of Jamaica
Point of information.
can be trusted, not now, even manage the Jamaican Intellectual Property Office. Ms. Price vehemently heralded that given the preponderance of bribes that permeates government spaces, Jamaicans have very low consumer confidence. But legally, politically, economically, realistically and practically, as well as in the context of our geopolitical and historical milieu, what else can the government do to leverage Brand Jamaica? Another angle to this moot is its preamble. The preface notes that Jamaica's cultural and creative industries, CCIs, have been estimated to generate Jamaica $2.2 billion annually. We can't debate the moot without adequate attention being given to the premise. So, if my opponents are claiming that the government should take the lead in leveraging more financially beyond the existing Jamaican $2.2 billion annual income, they must have some estimate for the government's contribution to revenue. So, my worthy opponents, what percentage of this $2.2 billion can be credibly and directly attributed to the efforts of the Jamaican government? This is your proposition. So give us the compelling evidence that undeniably illustrates not just a correlation, but instead evidence that the government's efforts directly had a positive effect on the Jamaican 2.2 billion annual income from CCIs. Until you can do that, your argument is essentially pedantic and just pure wishful thinking. No serious government can run on those virtues. Ladies and gentlemen, the issue of Brand Jamaica is more than just the brand itself. Brand Jamaica is experiencing an internal threat from within. From far as the 1970s, we constantly hear about the various permutations of Brand Jamaica, whether it be buy locally, buy Jamaica, or grow what we eat what we grow. But because of our fellow residents' foreign appetites, there are more basketball courts than cricket pitches, higher viewership for cable television than local media, and longer lines at KFC than at Juicy Beef. In addition to the lack of consistency and considerable gaps in data available, as cited by the Jamaican Business Development Corporation, our CCIs are also significantly challenged by a horde of socio-economic misfortunes that threaten the viability and sustainability of Brand Jamaica, all while deterring worthwhile investors. Not now. I close by reiterating that it is the organic intentions and activities of the Jamaican people who have taken the lead to leverage the brand Jamaica. The first speaker of the opposition rests.
Thank you, first opposition speaker. And we invite the second proposition speaker to present her contribution.
Good afternoon, honorable judges, ladies and gentlemen. Madam First Speaker, well said. You asked a question about the percentage of government's contribution. May not be able to give you the percentage, but I can tell you that the government contributed $3.9 billion to the tourism sector, created TPDCO to focus specifically on using tourism to enhance our brand, and in so doing, the tourism sector is the largest income-earning sector in Jamaica. That's what the government has done. Now you're saying we took 27 years to get here? Yes, we took 27 years because the government has been working on the nation brand. So is it because we took 27 years the government shouldn't do any more? We should just sit back and relax? I highly disagree. So I will be focusing this afternoon on improving brand image for economic growth by showing that it is in the government's best interest to take the lead in leveraging Brand Jamaica. I will also show that when governments take the lead in leveraging their nation's brands, the countries reap significant economic benefits. Now, a 2013 article entitled Beyond the Nation Brand, the Role of Image and Identity in International Relations.
Point of information.
Simon Anholt, just a moment, let me finish. Simon Anholt posits that one of government's primary responsibilities is to trade the country's good image to achieve success in the global marketplace. Go ahead with your point.
Since the Jamaican government has never done what you're proposing before, we're assuming there must be an example of at least one country that has led the leveraging of CSCIs.
Absolutely. I'll get to it. Now I'll continue. Now, Arnold also posits that developing countries that depend on foreign aid, such as Jamaica, cannot afford to portray a weak or negative image. So, because this will soon result or could soon result in cessation of this aid. So where does Jamaica stand in terms of its image? I'll tell you, currently, our brand image is both weak and largely negative. The nation's brand index, Mr. Speaker, it measures countries' image and their reputation around the world and then posts a list of countries that have good images. Jamaica has never made that list. Largely, the report says, because of its image of being among the world's worst crime-riddled nations. Now, to improve our image, the government must take the lead and do more so that the beauty of our nation can outshine the negative aspects of it, thereby putting us at the forefront of the global market. Let me use South Korea as an example of how this has worked. Now, before 2002, South Korea's image was that of a war-torn nation, much like Jamaica's image today of being a crime-riddled nation. Now, the government took the lead in 2002 of South Korea to do more to leverage their brand by using their campaign, Korea Sparkling. Now, in doing so, they started hosting international events, such as the FIFA World Cup. Now, during these international events, the country's culture, their economy, and their tourism industry were highlighted. This resulted in a complete transformation of the country's image. So instead of being seen as a war-torn nation, they were now seen as the technology and pop culture hub of the world, right? And
Point of information.
That, let me just finish this point. Because of that, South Korea's economy grew significantly. Go right ahead.
Question. Given the existing competing priorities that the government has on its budget, what budget line do you recommend that we cut in order to go ahead and leverage?
I am not going to recommend that we cut any budget line. What I'm recommending is that the government take the lead in ensuring that all stakeholders come together so that everybody benefits from our nation branding efforts. I'm continuing. In the same way that South Korea benefited from this effort, the Jamaican economy could grow if our government would take the lead in doing more to leverage our brand, using, for example, Jamaicans' arts and crafts, or natural attractions on our cultural heritage sites. Mr. Speaker, the tourism industry is the largest income-earning industry in Jamaica. And one of the attractions to our tourists is the crafts that we sell in our crafts markets. However, in a Jamaica Gleaner article, entitled "Tourism Minister Really Embarrassed by a Foreign Product in Jamaican Craft Markets," we read that most of the crafts sold in our markets are not even made in Jamaica. Therefore, the government can take the lead to do more in leveraging our brand in this regard by training persons to create art pieces. They can then exhibit these pieces at cultural events, tourism events, and then they can provide an opportunity for these pieces to be exported. This would attract more foreign currency into the country and would result in our brand image being improved. It will also increase economic activities in the country and ultimately increase our GDP.
Point of information.
Just hold it for me. No. There has long been calls for Kingston to be rebranded as from being the crime capital of the country to the city that reflects the culture, heritage, and the beautiful infrastructure of Jamaica. In a 2018 Observer article titled "Invested in Re-Imaging Kingston," Stephen Facey, who's the chairman and CEO of Panjam, he said, and I quote, "We must realize that the city has the resources and attributes to be great, all the ingredients to bake the cake, but we need an approved recipe and a visionary chef," end quote. Mr. Speaker, I put it to you this afternoon that that visionary chef must be the government of Jamaica, because all the other chefs, all the other stakeholders in this kitchen will use their own recipes to excite the taste buds of their specific clientele. On the other hand, the government's clientele is everybody, all stakeholders, private sector, public sector, media, citizens, and everybody alike. So everybody stands to benefit from the government taking the lead in this regard. Go right ahead.
How do you imagine the Jamaican government penalizing local and international offenders for breaching their copyright and patenting laws, including the countries that Jamaica has no extradition agreement with?
My dear, we're not here to talk about policies that we're planning to make. I'm telling you that based on our cultural and creative industries, the government can do more to leverage Jamaica's brand. I will continue then. My second point is that history has shown that where government has taken the lead in leveraging their nation's brands, these countries have seen significant economic benefits. So this sets the tone already for our government to learn from these examples. Nation branding is not an individual effort. It is a complex process, and it involves multiple stakeholders. So the government must take the lead so that all stakeholders can come together. For example, China, when their government took the lead in 2015, their GDP was $11.6 trillion US. But in that year, the government took the lead in their branding effort using Made in China, resulting in a 53% increase in the GDP. Now, Mr. Speaker, Dr. Henry Morgan says that Jamaica's brand is now worth between 33 and 35 billion US dollars. Unfortunately, we lose about $20 billion of our economic value every year from our brand. I'm not going to stand here and tell you that we lose this money because it's as a result of the government not taking the lead to do more. What I will tell you is that the Institute for Cultural Diplomacy lists the reasons why brands lose economically. These reasons include political instability, high crime rates, natural disasters, economic challenges, and negative media coverage. Jamaica is experiencing all of these. Now, with that established, who do you say my opponents should take the lead to make sure that we're not affected negatively? It has to be the government of Jamaica. I thank you.
Thank you, second proposition speaker. And we will now hear the contribution from the second opposition speaker.
My worthy opponents, how can we leverage without policies and legislation? And how can the government penalize China and India with their 1 billion population when they breach the trademark and patenting rights, as you spoke about earlier? Ladies and gentlemen, I stand here today to open the eyes of my opponents to understand that, one, it is the efforts of the government and individuals such as Bob Marley and Usain Bolt that have allowed Jamaica's CCIs to be generating an estimated $2.2 billion annually. And two, there is no need for the government to take the lead and do more to leverage brand Jamaica. My opponents, I put it to you that until the government successfully tackles the monster of crime and violence, poor literacy rates, and an inadequately resourced health sector, until the government successfully addresses these ills, then brand Jamaica cannot and should not be their central focus. On the contrary, it is the private sector that needs to take the lead. It is the private sector that has the competitive and the comparative advantage. Simply put, the private sector has the financial and human resources, the know-how, the technology needed to leverage brand Jamaica. Indeed, it is individual marketing campaigns that promote brand Jamaica and determine the authenticity, personality, and perception of the brand. It is the private sector that has the competitive and comparative advantage. A pertinent example is the Sandals Hotel Group. Sandals, in building and marketing its own name, has effectively marketed and sold brand Jamaica to countries far and wide. This wholesale marketing would have cost the government a tidy sum, and that which we cannot afford at this time. Additionally, the Jamaica Gleaner article titled Bob Marley's Exodus, published on July 29, 2007, highlighted that Time
Point
magazine,
of information.
not right now, highlighted that Time magazine had voted that same album the album of the century, and almost simultaneously, the BBC had selected Marley's song One Love as the song of the century. Ladies and gentlemen, Bob Marley has built and pushed the brand further than any Jamaican government could in the last several decades. The iconic One Love song of the century is still recognized among the best today. My opponents, since our independence, the nation's CCIs have, through thick and thin, been one of the leading exponents in promoting Jamaica, an effort which has placed brand Jamaica up front and center on the international scene. Learned opponents, and a political act, and the coke nor the crack, a reggae put Jamaica on top. Secondly, CCIs have been estimated to have brought in more than $2.2 billion.
Point of information.
But how could we not talk about that huge threat of piracy? Go ahead with the point of information.
Regarding your point about the Sandals ad, are you aware that sandals advertisements are as a result of TPDCO, which was created by the government in 1996 to enhance our brand through tourism?
We are aware, but also the funding was from Sandals Group and not from the government. The government's attempt at regulating this has fallen woefully short. We have many creative entertainers in Jamaica whose own branding has contributed significantly to brand Jamaica. Despite their hard work in the studio, on sets, and on stage, our ardent working entertainers are challenged financially because of the internal threat to the brand in the form of local piracy. How many of our people listen to Beanie Man, Movada, Bounty Killer, just to name a few? Yet, how many of us can truly claim to have bought any of their singles, not to mention their entire albums? The local freeness mentality and citizens' inability to buy brand Jamaica in this and other forms poses a serious threat to our beloved brand Jamaica. In a December 28, 2022 Bloomberg News article entitled "The Global Creative Economy is Big Business," University of Toronto professor Dr. Richard Florida referenced a UNESCO report that concluded that the rise in piracy, example, illegal streaming and file sharing services, has not only hit hard at legitimate distribution services, but at the talented artists and innovators who drive the global creative economy. According to its data, piracy robs the United States of 71,000 jobs annually, in addition to $12.5 billion in economic losses. The irony of all this, ladies and gentlemen, is though the Jamaican government led the effort to leverage Brand Jamaica through legislations, those have proven to be an exercise in futility. My opponents, the government has recently established laws for patenting, copywriting, and branding to protect the industry. How much can it really regulate? As with the pervasive internet, any man, woman, boy, or girl can now access and illegally download books, articles, songs, movies, and other motion pictures from the privacy of their home, on the bus, at work, in their cars, on vacation, just about anywhere. Even if the government were to continue leading this initiative, what resources do we have in place to effectively regulate Jamaica's CCIs? And what sanctions can they inflict on offenders? Simply put, ladies and gentlemen, the government just cannot cross it. My friends, Brand Jamaica is thriving, contrary to what you believe. And where it has fallen short has not been for want of additional leveraging by government, but because of the plethora of socio-economic problems plaguing the island. The government has been working hard. They are doing some things right, but they need to focus and use their resources in the best way possible. My opponents, I leave you to think on these things.
Thank you, second opposition speaker. We will take at this time the contribution from the third proposition speaker.
Honorable judges, my opponents, thank you. First speaker, you spoke about the government, the people. Remember that the government are the people, right? So it's one and the same. Now, can you imagine 27 years to reach that spot? If the government can do more, it will not take such a long span for us to achieve what we need to achieve. Remember what we are saying. We're not saying that the government is not doing. We're saying that the government needs to do more. And we are proposing that where there's a unified national effort, then Brand Jamaica will become the place. All right? We don't need, you ask about where the funds are going to come from. In the budget, there is a $133 billion on the other. We're going to use $10 billion of that, just a measly $10 million of that, with a collaborative effort to effect these changes. Now, are you saying that our government has no jurisdiction over the private sector? I hope that's not what you're saying. Government has ensured that the copyright is improved, and we're just saying that they do need to do more. Are you also saying, my speaker, that if we never had Usain Bolt and Bob Marley, we would not have a brand? I hope that's not what you're saying. We, the proposers, are resolute in stating that a group of people with the authority to govern Jamaica should be primarily responsible for adding strength, weight, clout, or pull to Jamaica's identity, image, and reputation, both domestically and internationally. Our reputation, I'll take it later, our reputation is important, and we posit that we need to invest in and make positive steps and get serious about portraying Jamaica as a place to work, of choice to work, to live, raise families, and do business. This will then become infectious and will change how we are viewed in the region and the world by large. Imagine with me how awesome it would be if when you spoke about Bob Marley, when we visit other countries and they see us, they're like, yes, this is a place where people come from who have top music, top dance, top runners, top culture. This is what we are saying. Not to mention how persons from other countries would be clamoring to come to us. We can effect this by the government leading this charge, incentivizing businesses, communities, and individuals who will promote our Jamaicanness through education, culture, and whatever they do. So when we come together and they're incentivized, then it's all of us going to be pulling together, so the government alone won't be shadowing or bearing all of that burden. Re-socialization from our early childhood level up to our secondary level would increase our cultural awareness. This could support diversification of infrastructure, of instructions rather, thereby maximizing our education delivery. Can you imagine how much learning would improve when we include more creative arts into our educational programs? Students are going to be even more interested in learning. We would see them using SCIA, for example, in learning the trigonometry, right? And they'll be excited about learning. Recently, my daughter had to create a skit to depict the knowledge gained about dancehall in her SBA, or English SBA. She went all out. She dressed the part. She enjoyed herself as she delivered her skit. What if we boosted our reputation through our students, the CXC IAs and the CAPE IAs and the SBAs, when we task them to creatively demonstrate what Jamaica is? Can you imagine how our brand would have increased? Not to mention that through competition, how much the reduction in conflicts would be evident. So crime would be on a low. Children would be more interested in expressing their creative prowess and less fighting it out. As Jamaicans, we are very talented. The skills trained in the culinary creations can serve as a means of economic gain for individuals and the country by large. So we're not dealing with individuals, we're talking about the entire Jamaica. Our exports would increase, our GDP would increase, while we're concretizing our culture and our reputation. Our children have become so Americanized. Can you imagine? We used to use boxes and so on to create little trucks outside. Now the social media can be utilized to project through our students what Jamaica is. And we're just saying that our government must take the lead. They have been doing, but we want them to do more. What benefits would we reap from having a cultural center in every parish of our country to display all of what we have Jamaica? Our national cultural policy even speaks to that. I bet you didn't even know that we have a national cultural policy. It indicated that US billions, are out there, and Jamaica was not even able to get it. And this is because we have not trademarked us. So when we trademark Jamaica, indeed our brand will increase. I rest my case.
Thank you, third proposition speaker. And at this time, we'll take the contribution from the third opposition speaker. Followed by that, we will pause for 1 minute to allow the reply speakers to gather their thoughts. Then we will take the opposition reply speaker, followed by the proposition reply speaker. So 5 minutes on the clock.
My learned opponents, you continue to talk about ways that the government can help to leverage. We agree with that point. However, that's not the moot. Instead, we're debating whether the government of Jamaica, not private enterprises, not local government, but whether the Jamaican government should lead the leveraging of Brand Jamaica. Also, just to educate you, Madam Third Speaker, from the proposition, the government is a representation of the people. They are not the people. To all those within the ambit of my voice, greetings. The proposition has the temerity and the gall to stand here and frivolously distort their malleable record as if we're gullible sticks and stones. Ladies and gentlemen, imagine, after berating the Jamaican government for their incompetence just 2 weeks ago, the proposition wants to give the same government they labeled as incompetent in their debate against TPD Co. additional responsibility of leveraging Brand Jamaica. Honorable judges, is the same team that also spoke passionately about levels of corruption in government, as well as Jamaicans' low confidence in their government. Yet still they want to now claim that this same government is all of a sudden best positioned to lead the leveraging of Jamaica CCIs. No Sankey, no sing so. Now, as we talk about lead to leverage Brand Jamaica, let us consider how our government has contributed to the existing Jamaica 2.2 billion annual revenue that my first speaker alluded to. This is you proposing the moot. So it is reasonable expectation to you to at least show us the receipt of your research in these findings. The truth is, our team is not a group of dogmatic ideologues. We will willingly agree when you show us the figures. As you have seen, we are very reasonable, and we will even highlight to you the work of Minister Ed Bartlett. Regardless of our political party affiliation, Minister Bartlett for many years has been the face of Jamaica tourism, and he has worked assiduously with the Jamaica Tourist Board and other overseas stakeholders for Jamaica to be an ideal place of vacation. But with due respect to Minister Bartlett, leadership of leveraging Brand Jamaica is far bigger than him. And in spite of his great work and his initiative, even the number of visitors annually is unpredictable because of other factors like our high crime rate. Additionally, Jamaica CCI is far more than just sand and beach. It includes our poetry, songs, fashion, to name many others. All of these constructs remain beautiful, but the ugly face of crime is a curse to Brand Jamaica's further success.
Point of information.
Our team, not now, our team maintains, honorable judges, that leadership to leverage Brand Jamaica is not the issue. Everyone world over is in love with everything Jamaica, including our accents, with the syncopated rhythm and multiplicity of dances that are introduced to the world daily, whether flary, willy bounce, bogo, butterfly, to name a few. Jamaica's attractive CCI has attention of everyone far and near, but those who are here anxiously look forward to get a visa to leave out of here, and those who are far often choose to love Jamaica from abroad.
Point of information.
This is simply because fear and trepidation that takes precedence over a desire to experience our amazing, delectable cuisine. In an effort to better convince our proposition, we will even use a metaphorical scenario that is within your professional intelligence. The opposition prognosis is that the proposition is acutely aware of the dangers of treating illness with wrong prescription because of misdiagnosis. Consequently, we imagine if a pregnant woman comes to Victoria Jubilee Hospital with symptoms of gestational diabetes, but misdiagnosed and subsequently treated with preeclampsia medication, the consequence would be medically disastrous and legally catastrophic. Similarly, with regard to leveraging Jamaica CCI, let us not speculate that a vacuum in leadership is reason for underperformance with regard to revenues.
Point of information.
Jamaica, that will be answered in the reply. Jamaica CCI is still very attractive, but only ugly crime rate is an anathema to be effective leveraging to Brand Jamaica. In closing, The syllogism that the proposition exposed 2 weeks ago was robustly predicated on the ineptitude of the Jamaican government. Throughout their debate against CPDCO, they postulated that the government is too corrupt and efficient to be trusted. Yet today they are saying the opposite. Ladies and gentlemen, this is duplicity. The proposition cannot be trusted. I rest my case.
Thank you, third opposition speaker. We will now pause for 1 minute. One minute has elapsed, and with that, we will invite the opposition reply speaker for 3 minutes on the clock.
Let's get the definition of government correct. The government is an elected body by the people of Jamaica to make decisions and handle the administration of the country. So let's get it correct. We, the opposition, are not suggesting that the government should be excluded from the process. Instead, we are debating that the government should not take the lead in leveraging our CCIs. Please, let us stick to the moot. The opposition has in no way articulated that the Jamaican government has not done its part in contributing to brand Jamaica, nor have we suggested that the government has not made an effort to leverage the brand Jamaica. If we did, we would have been disingenuous. We would have been dishonest in making such suggestion. Instead, what we are arguing is despite their good intentions and sincere efforts, the leveraging of brand Jamaica has been left wanting. Let us carefully peruse who the preposition is proposing should take leadership of leveraging brand Jamaica. They are asking our Jamaican government, the same government that despite their supermajority has not made patois a formal English. This same government that has held on to the ties with the antiquated relic of the British monarchy as a Commonwealth country. This same government that has continued to hold on to a European dress code in Parliament. Do you remember those and its close ties to our Jamaican government? This is the same government that is the custodian of over a very low literacy rate, high crime rate, double-digit unemployment, and high corruption index. Unequivocally, the government can legislate policies and make recommendations, but we have to take personal responsibility as a people to buy and promote brand Jamaica. Colleagues, let us all agree that the government has an obligation to create the condition and platform for CCIs and other industries to flourish, but not to lead the leveraging of brand Jamaica.
Thank you, Opposition Reply Speaker. And at this time, we will take the final speaker in the debate, the Proposition Reply Speaker.
Good afternoon again, judges. Just a bit of reality orientation for my learned opponents. Now, our definition for government that we provided came from the Oxford Dictionary, which states, a government is a group of people with power and authority to govern a set of people, country, or state. They do say that they have the legitimate right, which we agree. Therefore, they should. I say this again. Should does not mean that they have not. We're saying should means that they should make more efforts. They have set the foundation. Now we, as the government, must amplify that foundation. Our opponents spoke about our organic products that we have here. They spoke about individuals and corporations like Sandals and Bob Marley and Usain Bolt and how the absence of them would cause this and that and all types of drama. We're simply saying that as the government taking the lead, we will move away from this fragmented approach. It's no longer personal, corporation-wise, but as a nation under a unified brand, not under Sandals, not under Usain Bolt, not under any other individual, but as a nation, leveraging our cultural identities, our CCIs, amplifying them, that we're going to gain national, right, image, reputation, and identity for all stakeholders. You spoke about crime and illiteracy rates. Jamaica has one of the highest literacy rates in the Caribbean, highest CXC passes. And I did mention that if we're able as a nation to change the perception of our CCIs, amplifying their positive outcomes, behaviors that are antisocial will be reduced in the population, therefore reducing crime. Now, there's one thing I don't like. I don't like to be misquoted. Now, last week in the match, we spoke of corruption in relation to policing. Trust and confidence is low in relation to policing and the government. The Don Anderson poll was quoted. Several researchers were quoted, like the Caribbean Victimization Study, that stated that 81% of the Jamaican population did not have confidence or trust in the police force, as well as lawyers, judges, MOCA, and other organizations. Do not misstate what I said. That is slander. As a matter of fact, I feel as if I'm emotionally distressed by the misinterpretations of my statements earlier. Now, as the opposition, we stated that a centralized, unified brand is able to amplify our CCIs. Thus, the government will take leverage. Our national brand index is low. Amplifying the CCIs will improve that. We said identification, registration, and monetization of all products equals greater partnership for the country. We gave examples such as Korea. We gave examples that there is a national cultural policy who all these so-called organizations that the opposition wants to make look like exist individually currently are a part of. Now, Jamaica's intellectual and copyrights agencies have been providing enough resources to deal with the copyrights that they spoke about. Oh, if I download a song, should I go to prison? That is not the focus. The focus here is not the policies. The focus here is that the government must amplify, take leverage to build strength, reputation of the nation must be amplified through investments, further investments. Though my opponents listed our investments, I agree, but note this, we wish to amplify, not to say, we've done enough, so let us just walk away and let the private sector deal with it. Our citizens matter. Their access points and entry points matter. And as a government, we are giving them greater access through public and private partnership. I rest my case.
Thank you, thank you, Proposition Reply Speaker, and thank you to our debaters.
Ladies and gentlemen, let us give another round of applause to Victoria Jubilee Hospital and the Passport and Citizenship Agency, Immigration and Citizenship Agency. They have debated and presented very passionate and compelling arguments For the moot, Jamaica's cultural and creative industries have been estimated to generate $2.2 billion annually. Be it resolved that the government of Jamaica should take the lead in doing more to leverage brand Jamaica. We have heard the arguments, and now the judges will deliberate, and we will use that time to refresh ourselves. The next person from which you will hear is the chief adjudicator, who will sum up the match and announce the winner. For those of you online, stay tuned. We'll be right back.
panel that it was a good debate. The arguments generally were engaging. However, there were some deficiencies that I will point to that would have not augured well for the teams and ultimately would have resulted in one team losing the fight against the other team. It's important that we take into account what the motion or the moot says. And I want to read it. It says, the government of Jamaica should take the lead in doing more to leverage brand Jamaica. We heard an idea from opposition that government has not been effective over the last 27 years. So government had this sort of leadership role to play, and government clearly was derelict, clearly was ineffective in the execution of that leadership in leveraging brand Jamaica. So against that background, they contend that the ineffectiveness over the 27 years is a basis for government not taking a more leading role. The panel didn't think that that was a convincing position to take, in as much as the moot itself already identifies and establishes that there has to be more. The fact that the moot says more is to be done indicates that whatever currently has been done or has been done was inadequate. So to point to the fact that it was inadequate is not a sufficient basis on which to say government should not take a leading role now, or more of a leading role now. When we look at what we got out of proposition beautifully contextualized the debate by providing us with the understanding that there has to be a coordinated, unified approach in leveraging brand Jamaica. They pointed to what is problematic in the status quo, and it's this sort of ad hoc, fragmented, disjointed approach that is taken in leveraging brand Jamaica. They pointed out that a unified approach serves best in leveraging our brand. So against that background, a fundamental question that is to be answered in this debate is which actor is the best actor in leading this unified approach? And it was a consensus from the panel that the proposition team would have more convincingly outlined which actor should be the best, or why government, in essence, their case, should be the best actor. So what we heard out of proposition is the argument that there are some fundamental things that have to be done for us to garner the full benefit of leveraging brand Jamaica. They spoke to the fact that there needs to be a sort of cultural shift, a mindset change in essence, and that a government is best able to lead this particular change. However, we thought that that argument could have been contested by opposition, albeit the lack of contestation to that idea at the end of the debate left that argument standing. We also thought that the burden on opposition to prove why is it that if government were to take more of a leading role, then we essentially would still not have a more significant leveraging of the brand. So there needed to be a burden as to why is it that a burden has to be proved that if government were to do more now, there wouldn't be any significant change in the leveraging of brand Jamaica. We heard also other interesting ideas in the debate from proposition that were not responded to from opposition. Proposition articulated this idea that governments are elected by the people, and the people's will is expressed through the government. So against that background, proposition articulated that it is legitimate for government to be this leading actor acting on the will of the people through the very election that it has been elected to office to lead this sort of leveraging of the brand Jamaica rather than the sort of individual disjointed approach that would be taking place in opposition's world. We thought that arguments that could have aided opposition in advancing over prop came a bit too late in the debate. So the arguments about government's ineffectiveness and government essentially being inept were highlighted in first opposition speech. But then there has to be, as outlined in the training, a development of that argument in showing the panel how government's effectiveness would still be present when we have them doing more in leveraging brand Jamaica. And then down in the latter part of the reply speech, we also heard a sort of beautiful idea about the personal responsibility that each Jamaican should play, etc., albeit we didn't get development of that sort of argument. So at the end, we didn't think that the case presented by opposition was sufficient enough to trump proposition's case. And the panel is here for question and for feedback, but ladies and gentlemen, the winner of this debate is Team Proposition. And the panel thought that the best speaker from the proposition, or in the entire debate, is also from the proposition team, and that would be the first proposition speaker. And just for full transparency, ending on 225 points would be the team from Passport, Immigration and Citizenship Agency, and winning on 232 points is the Victoria Jubilee Hospital. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in to this debate, and please follow the Transformation Implementation Unit on all their social media platforms, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.